In a Denver hospital, a wounded Special Forces veteran fought for every breath. Doctors believed he wouldn't make it through the night until he whispered one final request. "Bring me my dog." Hours later, his German Shepherd, a combat-trained canine, stood by his side. But he didn't just offer comfort. What he did next sent shockwaves through the entire hospital, exposing a deadly secret and saving a life no human could protect. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments below. Snowfall whispered like wounded feathers drifting across Denver's skyline, the hospital windows trembling softly as wind scraped ice against glass. Inside Trinity Memorial Medical Center, the world felt strangely muted, as if the building itself held its breath. In the intensive care unit, Captain Logan Mercer lay motionless beneath thick medical blankets, his once unyielding frame now wrapped in layers of gauze and surgical dressings. A man once built like the mountains he had trained on, 6'2", broad-shouldered, carved features sharpened by years of conflict and frostbitten dawns, now reduced to fragility and stillness. His olive-toned skin, normally sun-worn from field missions, was pale beneath fluorescent lights. His jaw, usually shadowed by rugged stubble, trembled each time pain pulsed through him. His hair, a short military cut of deep brown, clung to his scalp slick with fever and sweat. 3 days earlier, Logan had walked into a warehouse on the outskirts of Denver as part of a covert support operation. His past as a U.S. Special Forces captain had drawn the FBI to him when whispers of a biological weapons ring surfaced. Years of infiltration, dismantling insurgent networks abroad, had made him a bloodhound for deception. But even the most seasoned hunter could fall to a trap. The explosion had come without sound. At least, that's how he remembered it. One moment he was scanning crates, the next, a blinding force punched his ribs and shredded steel around him. He remembered heat, dust, and the taste of metal. And then darkness. Now, in the silence of the ICU, Logan's breathing rasped softly, chest rising and falling with mechanical rhythm, as though even air no longer trusted his lungs to work alone. His mind drifted between worlds, the sterile present and memories sharp as shrapnel. Afghanistan, dawn patrols, mountains carved like the bones of ancient gods, camaraderie, firefights in distant valleys where every second felt borrowed, night raids where trust was currency and fear thrummed beneath Kevlar like a living creature. And through it all, by his side, the steady weight of loyalty embodied in 4 legs and amber eyes, Shadow, a German shepherd with a thick sable coat, intelligent gaze, and a noble posture that made him look more wolf than dog. Shadow had been more than a canine. He had been Logan's tether to sanity, courage, and survival. Together, they had crossed deserts, villages, mountain passes, and the blurred lines between heroism and sacrifice. It was Shadow who dragged him behind cover during their last deployment. It was Shadow who sensed danger before human senses could register it. And now, Logan's voice, hoarse, barely more than cracked air, fell from his lips like a dying prayer. "I want to see Shadow." He did not say it to the nurse, nor to any of the blinking monitors, but to the memory of those amber eyes he could almost feel at his bedside. If death waited nearby, Logan wanted to face it the way he had faced life, alongside his partner. Nurse Elaine Brooks paused mid-charting, eyes widening. Elaine was in her late 30s, tall and slender with a neat bun of sandy blonde hair and gentle blue eyes that had seen more goodbyes than any soul should bear. Her uniform fit crisp and clean, yet there were days it felt like armor rather than fabric. Deep, faint shadows under her eyes betrayed sleepless nights and the emotional weight that ICU nurses carried like invisible rucksacks. She had worked through pandemics, mass casualty events, and the quiet heartbreak of countless families. But there was something about soldiers, especially ones who whispered for a companion instead of morphine or family, that pierced deeper. She had a brother who never came home from Iraq, and though she rarely spoke of him, each soldier she treated reopened a chapter she kept sealed tight. Logan's plea was not desperation, it was devotion. Not to survival, but to a bond forged under fire. The overhead monitors beeped with methodical precision. Tubes fed into Logan's arms, bandages hugged his ribs, his left side was bruised purple beneath sterile gauze. A ventilator hissed softly, each whisper a fragile promise. Not yet, not yet. Elaine leaned over him, her voice gentle, steady, practiced in balancing empathy and professionalism. "Captain Mercer," she murmured, hoping sound would anchor him, "you're safe. You're at Trinity Memorial. You were hurt in an explosion, but you're alive." His eyes, storm gray, haunted yet unbroken, fluttered open. Even in weakness there was defiance in him. Soldiers didn't surrender to pain, they negotiated with it. He tried to speak again, but only a labored breath escaped. Elaine's throat tightened. She knew that tone, had heard it when her brother whispered for his own unit mates before slipping away in a field hospital overseas. A soldier's heart was not tethered to home or medals. It was tethered to those who watched his back in the dark. Footsteps approached. The ICU door opened to reveal Durlandon Miles, a man in his late 40s with graying temples, meticulously short silver hair, and a long white coat that gleamed under the light. He carried himself with the precise calm of a surgeon used to pressure, his emerald green eyes sharp like surgical steel. His nose was straight, expression unreadable, his posture confident without arrogance. To most, he appeared the embodiment of discipline and intelligence. Yet beneath the calm exterior, there was something tightly coiled, the sort of tension that comes not from compassion, but from someone who had learned to hide their intentions well. He was a respected cardiothoracic surgeon, known for saving officers, athletes, and dignitaries alike. But lately, whispers followed him through hallways, quiet conversations between nurses when they thought no one listened, unexplained late-night lab sign-ins, phone calls that ended abruptly when said. Staff walked in. Elaine didn't trust rumors, but she trusted instincts, and right now, they pricked at her like chill wind under clothing. "How's our soldier?" Dr. Miles asked, voice smooth, cultured, almost soothing. His gaze lingered on Logan's vitals, then on the man himself. Logan met his eyes only briefly before exhaustion pulled him back under. "He asked for someone," Elaine replied softly, unsure whether to repeat the request. "Or something." The doctor raised a brow. "Shadow," Logan rasped again, not loud enough to seem conscious, but urgent enough to slice through the room. Elaine's heart tugged. Dr. Miles paused, not puzzled, not dismissive. Something more subtle flickered behind his expression. Then it vanished, replaced by that clinical calm. "The mind reaches for familiar comforts," Dr. Miles said. "Especially in trauma. Focus on his vitals. We can address psychological needs later." But Elaine wasn't convinced. She had seen hallucinations. This wasn't one. Logan's voice carried intention, not confusion. Soldiers didn't beg for illusions. They called for brothers. Outside, snow thickened against the windows, wind howling like ghosts swirling through the Rockies. Inside, the sterile hum of machines couldn't drown out the quiet dread that settled in Elaine's chest. Logan's fingers twitched as though reaching for fur he remembered beneath his hand. His pulse monitor spiked briefly, as though his heart rebelled against helplessness. "Hold on," Elaine whispered, more plea than instruction. "We'll find him." A promise she didn't know how to keep, yet felt bound to. Down the hall, unseen and unheard behind a security door, a muffled bark echoed from a kennel transport crate that had arrived under emergency clearance hours earlier. A bark followed not by panic, but by purpose. And even through walls, even through cold, even through machines humming in sterile rooms, Shadow was waiting and listening. Shadow's paws touched the polished hospital floor with the measured precision of a soldier entering hostile terrain. Even the automatic doors seemed to hesitate before allowing him passage, their quiet hiss a kind of salute to the creature who moved like carved muscle and instinct. The German shepherd's thick sable and black coat carried the faint dust of snow. His amber eyes glowed with intelligence and vigilance far beyond mere training. He was 5 years old, prime age for a K-9 who had seen sandstorms in Afghanistan and night raids in forgotten villages where silence had been both companion and enemy. His ears flicked forward, back, then forward again, scanning sounds the way other warriors scanned horizons. Anyone watching could tell. This dog did not simply walk. He advanced. The ICU corridor was a sterile battlefield of muted lights, antiseptic smell, and the soft whir of life support machines beyond the walls. Nurses stopped mid-step, orderlies stiffened, even visiting families lowered their voices as Shadow entered, guided loosely by a tall hospital security officer. His name was Alan Price, a man in his mid-50s with a square jaw and salt and pepper beard trimmed neatly like an old-school sheriff. His navy blue security jacket fit snugly over wide shoulders, his posture straight, chest forward, hands steady. Price had once served as a sheriff's deputy in rural Wyoming, a job that had left bullet scars behind his right shoulder and a slight stiffness in his left knee. Life had battered him, but never broken him. There was calm steel in his blue eyes, an understanding of danger and the discipline to face it. But even the seasoned officer spoke with a hint of reverence. "Easy, boy," he murmured as Shadow stepped ahead, not pulling, not pushing, merely choosing the pace. Shadow did not need a leash to obey. He needed purpose, and today that purpose stood behind ICU Room 12's glass door, breathing shallow and waiting for a heartbeat stronger than his own. Nurse Elaine Brooks watched from the station desk, frozen mid-chart. Her breath caught at the sight. The dog she had heard whispered in Logan's final-sounding plea now stood before her, reality heavier than memory. She hurried forward, kneeling to offer her hand. Shadow did not back away nor lunge. Instead, he inspected her like he would a fellow soldier entering his perimeter, nose lowering, breath slow, eyes sharp. Elaine's heart squeezed. "Hi, Shadow," she whispered, brushing a stray strand of golden hair behind her ear. Her voice softened into something closer to prayer than greeting. "He's waiting for you." Beside her, a young nurse named Marissa Chen peered curiously. Marissa was 26, petite with sleek black hair tied into a high ponytail, almond-shaped brown eyes, and a soft, round face that still carried traces of sheltered youth. She was known for her bright optimism, always bringing colorful pens and cartoon Band-Aids for pediatric patients, as though cheer could mend anything. But today she swallowed hard, uncertain how to react to the tension clinging to the air. "He looks like he knows where he's going," she whispered to Elaine. "He does," Elaine replied. Shadow tugged forward, not aggressively, just insistently, as though following a trail only he smelled. Price released the leash. Compliance wasn't needed. Shadow reached Logan's door and paused, body rigid. He didn't whine, he didn't bark. He simply waited, ears twitching, nose pressed faintly to the glass. His breath fogged the pane with a small oval of warmth in the cold, sterile hallway. Elaine keyed the door. The lock clicked, the room exhaled, and Shadow walked in like a soldier returning to his fallen commander. Logan lay still on the bed, IV lines weaving into tired flesh. A bruise the color of evening shadow painted half his ribcage, while his right hand trembled involuntarily. Shadow approached silently, placing his broad head gently on Logan's chest. Logan's eyelids quivered, then lifted. His gaze struggled to focus, but once it found the familiar canine silhouette, his whole body slackened. Not in surrender, but in recognition. "You made it," he breathed, voice cracked and raw like desert gravel. Shadow licked his knuckles, slow and deliberate, as though sealing a bond older than the pain between them. Logan's lips twitched into the first true smile since the blast. Tears glimmered unshed in his gray eyes, not weakness, but gratitude beyond speech. "If I don't come back," he whispered, voice breaking, "you live for both of us." It was not a request. It was a last order. Shadow bowed his head against Logan's neck, his body pressed gently to the side of the hospital bed. The faint vibration of a low whine hummed in his chest like a suppressed cry. Then the door opened, and the atmosphere changed as though pressure dropped suddenly in an airplane cabin. Dr. Landon Miles entered, his white coat crisp, stethoscope draped around his neck like polished serpentine metal, jaw set in rigid stone. He had an athlete's build hidden beneath tailored fabric, surgical gloves folded neatly into his coat pocket, silver-streaked hair combed with meticulous control. But his emerald eyes, cool and hewn from glass, barely flickered at the sight of Shadow. Shadow did not growl immediately. His head raised slowly, each muscle tightening as though drawn upward by invisible strings. Then, deep from his chest, a sound like thunder gathering in a canyon rumbled into existence. Elaine stiffened. Price shifted his stance subtly, 1 foot forward. Marissa stepped back, hand over her mouth. Dr. Miles paused, unblinking. Control your animal, he said calmly, voice steady like granite. Animals sense stress. Feeding into it encourages aggression. Shadow's ears pinned forward, stance spreading, pupils tightening. Logan's fingers twitched, as though even unconscious. Instinct told him danger stood at the foot of his bed. Miles continued, assessing monitors with unhurried precision. We'll prepare him for surgery tonight, he said. His injuries are unstable. Hours count. Elaine swallowed. Something in her rebelled. He needs time. The dog just calmed him. Stress could... Time kills. Miles cut evenly, cold professionalism wrapped around a blade. I don't intend to let him die. Shadow's growl deepened, low, lethal, aware. In Afghanistan, that sound had preceded ambush warnings. In Syria, it had saved children in bomb-scarred villages. And now, here in Denver, in a spotless hospital room under soft blue lights, it vibrated as if danger stood not in caves or ruins, but in pressed fabric and sterilized steel. Miles met Shadow's gaze with steady defiance and turned away. Sedate him if needed. The dog stays outside during surgery. He left without another glance. When the door closed, Shadow's growl faded, replaced by a heavy stillness. Elaine knelt beside him, voice trembling. What did you see? She whispered, though she knew no answer would come in words. Shadow did not look at her. His eyes stayed on the door, sharp as a sniper sight, unblinking as he listened to fading footsteps. Logan slipped back into unconsciousness, but his hand remained curled in Shadow's fur, as though letting go would mean crossing a line neither wished to cross. Snow continued to fall outside, coating the world in fragile white. Inside, Elaine felt something shift, an unease like wind before lightning. Shadow lay sentinel at Logan's side, chest rising with silent vows, tail still, ears alert. Some battles are fought with guns, others with scalpel and poison, but tonight a war had begun in the hush of sterile corridors, and only one being sensed it fully. Shadow waited, and in the dark hollow of the ICU, danger waited too. Night settled over Denver like a morning veil, snow drifting sideways as wind clawed at the hospital windows. Inside Trinity Memorial's ICU wing, the world was swallowed by hush and tension. Fluorescent lights hummed, monitors pulsed, and the sterile scent of antiseptic mixed with the metallic whisper of fear. Logan Mercer's breathing had grown shallower. Each inhale fought through pain like a soldier dragging himself across broken ground. Shadow stayed pressed against the foot of his bed, ears perked, every nerve tuned like taut wire. The German shepherd's coat shimmered under the low light, and his chest vibrated in a low hum whenever footsteps echoed down the corridor. Shadow wasn't resting. He was waiting, and he recognized the enemy long before the humans did. Nurse Elaine Brooks paced the hallway outside, arms crossed and jaw tight, her usually controlled demeanor cracking under the strain of invisible danger. Her soft blue eyes, once gentle reservoirs of empathy, were hardened tonight by instinct and anxiety. A stray piece of blonde hair escaped her bun and lay across her cheek, but she didn't bother to move it. Her heart hammered not from fatigue, but from certainty. She had seen trauma, war veterans, overdose victims, and miracles. But she had never seen loyalty like this, not from another human being, but from the wolf-like guardian now standing between a dying soldier and something far worse than death. She pulled out her phone, fingers trembling slightly, though her voice was steady. "Agent Cross," she whispered urgently when the call connected. Special Agent Hunter Cross arrived 20 minutes later, his presence cutting through the hospital air like a blade. He was tall, 6'1", with a frame built from years of tactical missions and the relentless discipline of federal life. His hair, black with a subtle wave, was trimmed short, and the faint shadow of a beard hugged his angular jawline. His brown eyes held a hardened clarity, the kind found only in men who had witnessed violence and stood between it and the innocent. A thin white scar traced the right side of his temple, faint but noticeable, an old IED blast from Fallujah back when he and Logan were still wearing uniforms instead of the ghosts of battles. He wore a dark overcoat, tailored but practical, with a federal badge tucked discreetly inside. The holster at his hip wasn't visible, but every step he took reminded you it was there. "Elaine," he greeted with a curt nod, voice low and graveled by midnight urgency. "Walk me through it." So far, We're the only ones who know something's wrong, she murmured, glancing down the hallway. Shadow reacts only to one person, Dr. Miles. Every time he steps close to Logan, Shadow changes. I've never seen a dog react like that to a human unless that human's a threat, Hunter finished. His gaze shifted to the ICU window. Shadow stared back at him, eyes fierce, recognizing an ally. Logan always trusted his instincts, and Shadow's were sharper. The faint sound of shoes tapping on tile interrupted them. A young doctor approached, flipping through a tablet. His name tag read, Dr. Benjamin Hart, and he looked barely over 30. Slender build, fair complexion, short auburn hair, and kind hazel eyes hidden behind thin glasses. He wore a soft, concerned expression, a healer, not a soldier, and everything about him radiated earnestness. But beneath it, traces of insecurity lingered, the kind often found in gifted new doctors trying to prove themselves in a world where one misstep could take a life. Is everything okay? Dr. Hart asked, voice polite but laced with curiosity. I heard Agent Cross arrived. Is there an update on Captain Mercer's status? He'll live, Hunter replied, voice clipped, as long as the wrong person stays away from that operating room. Dr. Hart blinked, confused. Sorry, I don't understand. Dr. Miles is preparing for his surgery in the morning. Everything's scheduled. That's the problem. Hunter's tone cut like steel. Hart paused, weighing his next words. Dr. Miles has saved dozens of critical patients. I've seen him pull off procedures others refused. He's one of the best we have. And yet, Elaine added, Shadow senses something. You didn't see what I saw. Hart swallowed, glancing toward Logan's window. Shadow still stared, tail still, body rigid as stone. Dogs don't make mistakes like this, the young doctor whispered finally, doubt creeping in. Hunter's phone vibrated. He pulled it out, eyes narrowing as he scanned the screen. Wire transfer records, offshore accounts, coded messages, evidence. Enough to crumble a career, enough to expose a conspiracy. Logan had uncovered the biologic weapons ring months ago. He and Hunter had tracked rumors of contaminated medical supplies shipped internationally, but the domestic link was still missing. Until now. A surgeon, someone entrusted with lives, part of the chain feeding poison into the world. Hunter exhaled sharply, anger and betrayal flashing beneath his calm. He was paid to ensure Logan never leaves this hospital. He locked eyes with Elaine. It won't happen, not on my watch. At that moment, soft footsteps approached, heels on tile. Administrator Sarah Whitford turned the corner, clipboard in hand. Late 40s, tall and composed, chestnut hair swept into a sophisticated twist. Her business suit was tailored charcoal gray, elegant but functional, and a string of pearls rested at her collarbone. She had sharp cheekbones, amber brown eyes, and a voice that carried both authority and warmth. Years in hospital leadership had tempered her compassion with steel. She didn't startle easily. Agent Cross, she acknowledged, tone professional but curious. We're honored by your presence, though I hope it's not due to a federal emergency. Hunter gave a tight nod. Just making sure a decorated veteran gets proper care. A knowing glint flashed in Sarah's eyes. She had seen enough classified patients to recognize when truth traveled under layers. If there is something I need to know, I expect transparency. And you'll have it, Hunter replied, though his tone implied not yet. Before more could be said, Shadow stiffened. A low growl rolled from him. Warning, not attack. Footsteps echoed again. Dr. Landon Miles approached from the other corridor, clipboard in hand, expression calm as winter ice. Good evening, Miles said smoothly, eyes sweeping past them as if they were furniture. I trust everything is in order. Shadow's growl grew deeper, teeth baring slightly. Sarah stiffened, not at the dog, but at the unnatural stillness inside Miles's green eyes. Hunter stepped casually between Miles and Logan's door. No badge, no threat, just presence. Controlled, dominant. Miles's lips twitched as though suppressing irritation. I assume you're ensuring Captain Mercer receives the best care, he said. As am I. That depends, Hunter replied evenly, on what you define as care. Silence coiled in the hallway, tight, suffocating. Then, without another word, Miles gave a curt nod and continued walking. Footsteps faded. Shadow's growl slowly dissolved into a low rumble, tail still rigid. Hunter leaned toward Elaine. "We're not leaving him alone tonight." Elaine nodded. "Neither is Shadow." The clock hands crawled toward dawn. Snow fell heavier outside, burying the city under silent white. Inside, machines beeped, hearts beat, and danger hovered unseen. Shadow lowered his head, watching the door with unblinking fury. Logan's fingers twitched again, as if sensing the storm building around him. Tomorrow they would try to take him, but tonight he was guarded. And somewhere in the unseen corridors of the hospital, Dr. Miles prepared. Dawn bled purple across the Rockies as morning crept over Denver, quietly unforgiving. Inside Trinity Memorial, the world shrank to steel, cold light, and the hum of machines preparing for a battle no one but a few souls knew was coming. The operating theater glowed under powerful lamps, a stage where life and death negotiated in sterile silence. Logan Mercer lay on the surgical table, his eyelids fluttering in a haze between waking and oblivion. His body, once built for war, was limp and pale, blankets pulled to his chest while IV lines fed into his veins like pale lifelines. A soft groan slipped past his cracked lips, not of fear but of a warrior unwilling to surrender. Somewhere inside, he was still crawling through the disaster zone of that warehouse blast, still hearing alarms, still tasting metal and dust. Survival, to him, was not instinct. It was memory carved into bone. Shadow stood behind the reinforced glass of the observation chamber, his breath fogging a small patch on the surface, golden eyes burning with primal focus. His fur bristled along his back, tail rigid, muscles trembling not in fear, but in the intolerable stillness before a storm. The German shepherd looked almost like a statue of war, carved, strong and scarred, body taut, barely containing the instinct to protect. He didn't whimper. He didn't bark. He waited, and his waiting was heavier than noise. In the theater, Dr. Landon Miles moved with calm precision, surgical mask fitted, dark brows lowered in serene concentration. His silver hair gleamed beneath the operating lights, and the corners of his eyes creased with what might look like determination to save, if one didn't know the truth. He adjusted his gloves with slow deliberation, a conductor preparing to orchestrate a fatal symphony. Beneath calm, his gaze held an edge, something sharpened not by compassion but by control. His emerald eyes flicked toward Logan, not with empathy, but calculation. He had killed before, not directly, but through orchestrated complications, the sterile cruelty hidden in perfect surgical charts. Today, he would do so again. At the room's corner stood Nurse Hannah Reeves, a seasoned scrubs nurse in her early 40s. She was statuesque with dark auburn hair coiled neatly under her cap, freckles dusted lightly across sun-kissed skin from years spent hiking Colorado's trails. With broad shoulders and a calm, earthy presence, she might have been mistaken for someone who once worked on mountain rescue teams, and in fact, she had, before the emotional toll of field casualties drove her into controlled hospital environments. She believed deeply in procedure, safety, and human goodness, which was why her eyes, now narrowed slightly, betrayed confusion at the tension vibrating in the room. Something felt wrong, like a note held too long in a song. Another nurse adjusted machines near Logan. Jacob Ryder was in his late 20s, wiry with sandy hair. Cropped close, freckles across the bridge of his nose, and nervous energy perpetually buzzing in his blue eyes. He was sharp, capable, a talented ore tech who once dreamed of flying fighter jets before panic attacks in flight school grounded that ambition forever. He wore a sense of wanting to prove himself like a second uniform. His hands fidgeted with sterilized instruments, but his gaze kept bouncing between Miles and the window where Shadow stood. "Do you guys hear that?" he whispered suddenly, as though Shadow's silence had weight, as though the air itself was vibrating. Dr. Miles ignored him, leaning forward toward the tools laid out in pristine order. Among the scalpels, clamps, and syringes, a single vial glimmered faintly. Clear, almost beautiful, like a drop of morning dew, lethal, hidden among innocence. Miles's fingertips brushed near it, slow as a serpent tasting the air. Outside the glass, Shadow's muscles twitched, his ears pinned. He inhaled sharply, nostrils flaring as though he could smell the intention in Miles's veins. In the observation area, Agent Hunter Cross and Elaine Brooks stood like sentinels. Hunter's shoulders were squared, jaw clenched, hand hovering near where his concealed sidearm sat holstered. His voice was low, coiled steel. If he reaches for it, he's done. Elaine's breath trembled, but her voice did not. Shadow won't wait for us. I know, Hunter muttered, and God help Miles if he moves first. On the table, Logan's lips parted, forcing breath around the rise of anesthesia. Shadow. His voice barely existed, but Shadow heard him. A tension snapped in the dog's posture. His eyes widened in a primal flash. His soldier needed him. Miles reached, fingertip gliding toward the deadly vial. Logan whispered again, If I don't make it, you know the way. Only Shadow could hear the unspoken language. Not words, but duty. Shadow made a sound then, not bark, not growl. A rising howl, ancient as wolves under moonlight on Afghan mountains. It vibrated through the thick glass, through the metal frame, into every bone in that room. Dr. Miles froze, too late. His fingers grazed the poison vial. Shadow lunged. He hit the glass like a missile. Crack! The reinforced pain shuddered. A second strike, claws scraping, body thrust, voice erupting into a roar. Crash! The barrier exploded into shards that glittered like ice. Nurses screamed. Hannah reeled backward, hand instinctively flying to her mouth. Jacob stumbled, instruments clattering. Shadow landed on the surgical floor, skidding, blood streaking his paws from glass but body unstoppable. He launched again, a blur of fur and fury. Miles's hand lifted, syringe between his fingers, a snake prepared to strike. But Shadow was faster. He clamped his jaws around Miles's wrist, the crunch audible, bone and betrayal splintering in one savage motion. Miles screamed, a raw animal sound of shock and agony, as the syringe flew from his grasp, needle snapping as it hit the floor. The vial shattered, liquid hissing against metal. Shadow dug his claws into the sterile tiles, anchoring, refusing to let go even as Miles thrashed. Jacob shouted, Jesus, someone! Hannah grabbed saline towels, instinct colliding with panic. Elaine shoved open the theater doors while Hunter surged in behind her, his voice booming, Federal, hands off the patient! Back from him now! Miles gasped, eyes wild, mask half torn, face draining pale as security alarms began to wail. Get this animal off me! He's killing me! He's saving him, Elaine whispered fiercely, tears in her eyes. Miles sagged, his strength ebbing not from blood loss but from the collapse of power. Shadow held his wrist like a steel trap, not crushing but restraining, precise, controlled, righteous. Logan lay still, unaware his life had been bought again by teeth and loyalty. Miles looked around, and in the faces of the room he saw judgment, not mercy. Hannah's shock was turning to horror. Jacob's face was a pale mask of betrayal, and in Hunter's stare burned a silent sentence. Dr. Miles's composure cracked. You don't know who you're dealing with, he gasped. This goes beyond you, Hunter cut, voice iron, and ends now. Shadow didn't move until Hunter finally commanded softly, Release. Blood staining his teeth, the shepherd stepped back, chest heaving, body ready to strike again if needed. Miles collapsed against the wall, clutching his ruined wrist. Silence suffocated the room for one suspended heartbeat. Then the hall erupted. Alarms, footsteps, voices. But inside there was only the echo of Shadow's snarl and the truth now laid bare. A dog prevented murder in a room designed to save lives. And the war that Miles thought he controlled had just slipped through his fingers. Winter sunlight filtered through thin hospital curtains, casting pale gold onto the polished floor of the rehabilitation wing. Weeks had passed since the operating room erupted into chaos, since Shadow shattered glass and fate in one decisive leap. Now the sterile ICU lights had been replaced by the gentler hum of recovery halls and the soft rubber scent of physical therapy mats. Captain Logan Mercer stood at parallel bars, jaw clenched, one hand gripping metal as if it were a helicopter skid over enemy soil. His frame, though still impressive, broad shoulders, strong arms marked with surgical scars, moved with stiffness, each step an act of defiance against the body that betrayed him. Sweat slicked his temple, sliding down tanned skin turned pale by hospital air. His face, still rugged with faint stubble and war-etched lines, stretched into a grimace as he shifted weight to his injured side. But his eyes, storm gray and unforgiving, burned with stubborn fire. Quitting had never lived in him. Beside him padded Shadow, thick coat gleaming under ceiling lights, tail held low and steady like a soldier guarding a perimeter. The German shepherd's nose occasionally nudged Logan's wrist, as though reminding him he wasn't walking alone. A light therapy harness attached to Logan's waist clipped gently to Shadow's custom harness, a subtle guide rope, not to pull him, but to anchor him. When Logan stumbled, Shadow leaned just enough to balance him, not overpowering, but supporting with quiet power. They moved not like patient and animal, but like two halves of a single will. Standing a few steps behind, arms folded, was Jackson Hale, Logan's physical therapist. Despite sharing a last name with the disgraced surgeon, Jackson bore no resemblance, physically or morally. He was in his mid-40s, African-American, broad-chested and built like someone who once played linebacker but now favored fitted polos and athletic track pants. His close-cropped beard had flecks of gray that lent gravitas to his stern but encouraging demeanor. A tragic accident early in his military career, his closest friend struck by IED, had driven him out of active service and into rehabilitation medicine. Sometimes a flicker crossed his warm brown eyes when Logan faltered, as though he relived the moment he couldn't save someone once. Yet he channeled that guilt into fierce conviction. No soldier healed alone on his watch. "Keep your core engaged, Captain," Jackson said, voice steady, neither harsh nor soft. "Don't fight the pain, walk through it." Logan huffed, breath ragged. "Easy for you to say," he muttered, but the corner of his mouth twitched upward. Jackson's eyebrow rose. "You volunteered for multiple combat deployments, Mercer. You've crawled through worse than a training mat." Logan's answer was a grunt and another step. At the doorway leaned Detective Laura Whitman, mid-30s, athletic posture and wavy chestnut hair, pulled back in a tactical ponytail. Her badge glinted at her hip, just above dark-washed jeans and a fitted leather jacket. She had been assigned to oversee Miles's chain of custody and the hospital's security fallout. Years on Denver's organized crime task force had carved her into someone efficient, sharp, and fiercely protective of justice. A slight scar traced her left eyebrow, a souvenir from a knife attack during a bust years earlier. She rarely smiled, but today her stern hazel eyes softened. "You're improving," she said, voice low. "I've seen toddlers with steadier form, but you'll get there." Logan smirked weakly. "And I've seen detectives with friendlier bedside manners." She shrugged. "You didn't need friendly. You needed honest." Shadow flicked his ear, as if agreeing. A voice broke in, gentle yet crisp. "You look stronger today." Nurse Elaine Brooks approached, carrying a clipboard but wearing a proud half-smile. Her light blue scrubs matched the calm warmth of her eyes. She had traded ICU chaos for rehab rotation to keep watch over Logan, though she'd deny if asked whether it was duty or something deeper pulling her. "And Shadow looks offended you haven't thanked him for dragging you across the finish line." Logan glanced down. Shadow stared up, expression noble and unimpressed. "He expects steak dinners for the rest of his life," Logan grunted, "and I intend to provide them." Elaine's laugh was soft, almost unfamiliar after weeks of stress. "I hope you like being broke." "He saved me," Logan said simply. "Debt of a lifetime." His hand reached down and brushed Shadow's fur. The dog leaned into him, heartbeat steady, anchoring him to now. This time, Logan did not shake. Later that afternoon, sunlight dimmed into winter amber as the city gathered at Denver City Hall. A podium stood at the top of wide granite steps, flags flanking it, their stripes rippling under mountain wind. Rows of uniformed officers, military personnel, medical staff, and civilians filled the plaza. Murmurs hushed as Logan emerged in dress blues, not his battle fatigues, but the ceremonial uniform earned through blood and loyalty. The jacket fit slightly looser than months earlier, body still rebuilding, but he stood tall all the same. Shadow walked at his side, wearing a black service vest with a gold seal, K9 Valor Unit, medal ceremony. At the podium stood Governor Elijah Ward, a man in his mid-50s with silver hair combed back and deep laugh lines that contrasted his intense brown eyes. His navy suit was immaculate, tailored to a fit both commanding and fatherly. Once a prosecutor who lost his brother in military service, Ward carried solemn respect for those who bled for country. Today, his voice carried across stone and sky, we honor a hero who did not ask for glory, who did not speak a single word to defend a life, and yet defended it with unshakable conviction. Logan swallowed hard. With courage born not from orders, but from loyalty, Ward continued. Shadow acted where humans hesitated, saw danger where science failed, and proved that fidelity is a force stronger than fear. He turned, and a velvet box was opened. A glimmering metal of valor for service animals, was lifted, its gold catching twilight like a small sun. Ward knelt, surprising many, and pressed the metal gently to Shadow's chest harness. Sometimes, he whispered, voice thick with reverence, the bravest officers do not speak. They stand. Applause broke, some tears too. Logan knelt beside Shadow, palm cradling his head, forehead gently touching fur. Snowflakes drifted down, delicate as blessings. You didn't just save me, he murmured, voice trembling with truth. You brought me back to the world. Shadow's tail gave one steady thump. As crowd noise rose, Logan stood, Shadow pressed close to his leg. They stepped away from the podium to the river path behind City Hall, overlooking the slow-moving Platte shimmering beneath setting sun. Elaine, Jackson, and Hunter arrived behind them, offering quiet nods, but they did not interrupt. This moment belonged to two warriors. Logan rested a hand on Shadow's back. We walk forward, he whispered. Together. They moved beneath trees coated in frost, footsteps crunching, tails of wind stirring fallen leaves. Man and dog, quiet silhouettes against the blazing sunset, taking steps not away from pain but into life again, bound by a vow carved into battle and rebirth, no one left behind, not ever. And somewhere deep in Logan's recovering soul, a new beginning stirred. In the end, sometimes miracles don't arrive with shining wings or thunder from the heavens. Sometimes they come quietly, on four loyal paws, in the steady heartbeat of a friend who refuses to let us fall. And maybe that is how God works more often than we realize, not always through grand signs, but through loyalty, courage, and the love he plants in the creatures and people who walk beside us. Every day, in our ordinary lives, we pass by silent heroes, a faithful dog waiting by a door, a tired nurse still smiling at the last patient, a veteran fighting silent battles no one sees, a stranger offering kindness without expecting anything in return. These moments, small as they seem, are reminders that miracles still breathe in this world, that God still moves through loyalty, through sacrifice, through love that refuses to give up. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who believes in second chances, in loyalty, in courage, in the kind of love that God blesses quietly, in winter snow or hospital silence when hope feels thin but still refuses to break. Leave a comment and tell us your thoughts or a moment when you witnessed a miracle, big or small. And if you want to journey with us through more stories of faith, loyalty, and the extraordinary strength hidden in ordinary hearts, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. May God bless you, protect your family, guide your steps, and place angels, with wings or without, beside you on every road ahead.